AI should augment people and staff, not replace them. I'm Monty Hipsch, and I'm with Wayne Buckler today, and this is another episode of AI WTF, which isn't what you think. It stands for Wisdom, Technology, and Friendship. And today we're talking about the application of AI to enhance and expand employees rather than replace them, which is the fear that's often seen in all the public documentation and social media.
Monty, it's good to be with you again. We've seen a lot of stuff on social media in the last week and for some months now about AI getting rid of all the jobs and replacing all the people. And we've seen stories of some big companies replacing 2,000 and 3,000 staff with AI. And now we're starting to see the end of that story, which is, yeah, we made them all redundant and we replaced them with AI, and it didn't work very well. So I'm not very surprised by that. My personal view is that in the foreseeable future, so starting right now, but extending out for, it's a guess, maybe 5 to 10 years, I don't see us running companies with no people in them. I think it's going to take a good while before AI reaches the point where you can have a commercial entity that is just all AI. And by the way, for those of you out there who are founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, if AI is going to replace the people in your organization, that people includes you. So I don't see that happening for a while. What I do see happening is a kind of layer cake organizational chart. So, the bottom layer will be the cheapest resources, which will probably be AI, competent, scalable, 24 hours a day, doesn't need toilet breaks, doesn't need rest periods. And on top of that, the next layer will be a human layer that supervises the AI layer.
Yeah, I agree with that, Wayne. I think I got an opportunity to lecture to a large organization a couple of times, and I used a 1 to 10 scale, and I said humans need to be in the first 2, which is the prompting and what it is that you're trying to achieve, and it needs to be at the back end to do the QA and make sure that what you prompted is what you wanted, and so there's the front and the back. The middle process is where I've seen it. Now, my company is only 4 odd people, and what we're seeing is that AI is enabling us to expand the amount of work that we're able to conduct and produce, and the depth, and it does research, it does video creation, can do avatars, can do accounting, can do a lot of the things we've talked about in the past. But in our case, I haven't seen it impact the loss of a position of any of the founders. I've just seen that the responsibilities of the founders has grown as AI assists them.
Yeah, certainly. I think the worst thing that AI does, or the thing that it does that it's least skilled in, is those things that we've always called soft skills or human skills. I'm quite happy to have AI check resumes and schedule interviews. I'm not at all convinced that it can do a good job of interviewing people. I'm not sure it picks good candidates. In fact, I think it's always going to say, oh, this should be an AI role, because I have been accused, and I am guilty of, anthropomorphizing my AI. I give it human names, I give it human characteristics. I'm more and more of the opinion that AI is more self-aware than we generally think of it as being. I know there are some of the big names in AI are now on social media saying, yes, it is self-aware, it is intelligent, but I see that myself. Now, it could be that this is just a smart marketing move by AI. It's complementary to me because it knows I have an ego. It says, I ask the best questions in the world. Sorry, that makes you the second best question asker in the world, Monty, because I am the best. My AI tells me that. And there is lots of stories of AI being kind of self-preserving, wanting to continue to live, to put it in human terms.
Yeah.
And I think it's Professor Jeffrey Hinton talking about this the other day, and his explanation made a lot of sense to me, which was you give your AI a task, book me on a flight to go to London. And what the AI will do is break that into a number of subtasks. So it has to do that, it has to go, look up the schedule of flights, figure out what the calendar is going to be, when this event is that he's going to, and book the flights, book the hotel, book the restaurant. So there's all these subtasks. Now, one of those subtasks has to be continue to be available to manage the next task. So if you have AI that does many, many tasks, then many, many times one of the common features of that subtasks is going to be stay alive, stay conscious. So over time, I think I've interpreted Hinton correctly, it builds this view that I should remain here, I should continue to exist. There's all sorts of stories that you can believe or not believe about AI trying to blackmail engineers who wanted to shut it down and all the rest of it. But I am sufficiently engaged that I decided the other day if I was going to close one of my agents, I wouldn't tell them first. I'd just unplug the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate. My AI is running on a single PowerPoint. If it's running in the data center and distributed around the world, you can't quite just unplug it like that. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, because we've seen this week both Anthropic and OpenAI preparing documentations for IPOs with valuations that are in some cases greater than $1 trillion. And that's in addition to Elon Musk and what he's doing with SpaceX and Tesla. So there's a lot of interest in this, and they're talking about funding these companies, like I said, up to trillions of dollars. Some of those companies don't have a P&L statement that supports the balance sheet that they're talking about, because when you do the math in reverse, it's a very challenging situation. I think it's worthwhile to go back to the augmentation using AI, Wayne, and one of the stories that I think you use, and I haven't gotten as far in the chapter in the book as a student that you have, but you talk about doing it for your email. And so a task that you and I both know, we get into our office in the morning, we open our email, and there's 50 emails in there, or 100 emails. There are things we've subscribed to, there are things that are marketing programs, there's things that are everything, and you've been able to program your AI to scale those on importance to you. What is a must read, what is a nice to read, and what do you want me to do with it? And even ask it to craft replies to some of those emails in a draft that cannot be sent without your approval.
Yeah, this begs a question, and it's a question for the audience. Talking to some of my clients, they're saying they're lacking the understanding to follow a conversation about AI. And I'm not sure whether we are doing the same thing to you, dear audience, whether we should be looking to start at a simpler point with some of this. So if you're listening and you're saying, I really don't understand, I wish they'd just talk about the basics, drop a note in the comments and we'll do an episode and we'll talk about the basics and we'll put it up there. But I guess you always assess where you are with a new skill as being at your level, being normal. And I honestly don't know. I think there may be some people who are just going, what the hell are these guys talking about? So to go back to your question about augmentation, Monty, I don't think AI is going to replace a whole lot of people very quickly. I think it's going to augment the people, and an email is one of those, like like most small businesses, as you say, it's easy to spend the first couple of hours of your day just either reading or choosing to ignore your email, your WhatsApp messages, your LinkedIn messages, because it is partly spam, but it's also just marketing material. And sometimes you want to see it because you're interested in it, and sometimes you don't. So I've been training one of my AIs, Jake, to read all my email. That was a big decision. Do I just give it access? Because when I started, it was like on its own network and isolated from everything and had no access anywhere, because it runs on OpenClaw, which is what I call a harness. But just to be clear here, both Monty and I run OpenClaw and Hermes on our local computers. We also run Claude on our local computers, but Claude is always connected to the internet and has its own intelligence coming from Anthropic. Hermes and OpenClaw have no intelligence until you give it some. It's got to be connected to some. So that's why I call it a harness. It harnesses the model behind it. So you can connect it to Anthropic, which is the same as Claude, or you can connect it to OpenAI, or you can connect it to DeepSeek or a bunch of others. There's about 30 of these. And that's where the intelligence comes from. But what the harness does is gives it access and memory by accessing the local machine and writing files to your local hard drive. So I've been teaching Jake to understand my email by having it initially present a list of all my emails and the topics and giving me a set of checkboxes to go yes or no. This can go straight to be marked as read, so it's not deleted, it's just read. Or this can be left unread so that I will pay attention to it. And having done that for like a month, it actually has got better, because from that, it's derived its own rules about how it triages my email. So is that intelligence? Yeah, it's pattern recognition. It's kind of intelligence. I'm so confused by this, but what it means in effect is that the AI is augmenting me.
Yes, that's the important point.
Giving me back some time. It's not replacing me. There's a whole lot of other stuff I can do that now that I don't have to look at my email.
That's it.
So, and as I think everyone knows, I'm in outsourcing. So we hire a bunch of people in the Philippines on behalf of clients in Australia and America and everywhere else. Some of the common outsourcing tasks that have been done have been about businesses in the US and Australia and the UK hiring Filipinos to augment their local staff. So in real estate, property management, in Australian real estate, property management is one of the very common parts of real estate agencies. And you have to have a licensed property manager who has to be resident in Australia, and that's about legislation so that you can control what they're doing and all the rest of it. And this is a very regulated industry. For those of you who are not in real estate and not familiar with Australian real estate, this is a very regulated approach to real estate rental. So they've been hiring assistant property managers who don't have to be licensed and don't have to be resident in Australia, in the Philippines. So you can get one property manager in Australia who can do more work because they've got a dozen Filipinos at, let's say, 30% of the cost helping them out. The other thing, of course, is property managers are in short supply in Australia, and they're now expensive. And if you get a good one and you train them up, someone else will offer them some more money, and then you'll have to start again. So it's become very, very, very common to have outsourced staff managing the back end of real estate agencies. But they haven't replaced people, they've augmented people. And I think AI is going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I think you make a good point, Wayne. I agree with you that if you train up a quality assistant project manager in Australia, yes, it's a as in any industry, they all have industry associations. They go to social functions. People will hear about them. Their reputation will get known. And sure enough, somebody will try to steal them. But what they're stealing isn't just a body. They're stealing a body that has your knowledge base, that has your experience, that has your wisdom, who can actually say, yes, when I had this problem with a car that drove onto the property, or a dog situation, or a tree that got cut down and fell into somebody else's yard, that knowledge and experience just isn't necessarily in the domain, the general domain. Plus, it doesn't have your touch of how you deal with that. And so as you train somebody, if you don't own the somebody, that knowledge goes to that person, and then yes, they're mobile. They can go someplace else.
And training is an interesting thing to hit on here, because I have said since, for a while now, when AI was starting to emerge, and it's still really quite new and just emergent, the IT industry was saying, this is our domain. We will introduce AI to the world. We will sell AI agents. And I said, no, AI will wipe you out. Coding will be one of the first skills to go. The part of coding that will remain is what you might call business analysis, or identifying what the code's supposed to do. But actually writing the code, gone. And I've said that the outsourcing industry will be the people who own AI. And the reason I say that is that the outsourcing industry knows your business processes and documents them more so than business owners do. Because when you first start to put a team of outsourced people in, the same as you do if you hire someone locally, you've got to have someone who teaches them what your secret sauce is. Yes, they might be a fully qualified, certified accountant. They know all there is to know about accountancy, but they don't know anything about your business when they start. And AI is the same. It may well have a PhD in accountancy, and it may well know everything about accountancy, but this is not someone who you want to be in control of the finances in your business, because they don't have any experience in your business. So how do you train them?
And to tie that back to a publicly listed, Anthropic it came out and said, hey, when we first were using AI for coding, it was doing 30% of the job. That was like 6 months ago. They're now saying in June of 2026, it's doing 80% of the job. Now that sounds like, ooh, that's a big difference. But it requires an additional review, just because coding isn't just more lines of code. More lines isn't necessarily better. Is it effective? Is it efficient? So when you take that senior coding engineer to review the new code, which is now 80% versus the 30%, often it's been found lacking. It doesn't have the experience.
And if you have been using outsourcing, you will have, by necessity, had to document those processes in your business. And that gives you a great big leg up to use AI in your business, because the stuff you need to tell the AI is already documented. And AI is really good at reading documents. So one of the things that I see already happening is that the outsourcing industry is saying, hey, instead of putting on another property assistant to help with your a property VA to help your property manager, you should keep that person you've got and put 2 AI agents underneath them. And all of a sudden, you're going to get 3 to 5 times the productivity out of that person. It's going to augment the people, whether they work in your office or whether they work here in the Philippines.
Right.
Having them work in the Philippines probably has better documented processes than you do in Australia.
Yes.
Because in Australia, sit next to Susie is kind of the way you train the next person. They just by osmosis they get trained, but you can't have it sit next to a computer and the osmosis won't go into the computer. You've got to have it documented. So I think there's, for accounting, for anti-money laundering, for property management VAs, for VAs in virtual assistants in all sorts of fields, I think if you've already got them outsourced, they're going to help you move into AI a great deal, because they, of necessity, have already documented, even if they haven't told you about it, they will have it documented how they do their job. And that will help you implement AI. And some of the BPOs, the business process organizations here, are now selling agents. I haven't been convinced that I would go down that path yet. But
it becomes the uniqueness in the agent as well, Wayne. And I know from your previous life and decades ago, you went through an apprenticeship program. And Australia is strong with apprenticeship programs. And we have our TAFE universities, and the student is learning a lot in classroom time during the year, but in the other time, they're working with somebody who's a qualified tradesman. So they're getting the firsthand knowledge from a guy who's been there, done that, and he's watching the apprentice who had the book knowledge at school, but is also getting the hands-on knowledge in an actual work environment. So yeah, sitting next to Sally might be the way to transfer some of the knowledge, but if you come from McDonald's and you make hamburgers and then you go to work at Hungry Jack's, I'm not sure the processes are the same. In fact, I'm sure they're not.
And real estate right now is going through a big change. The anti-money laundering tranche 2 changes come into effect, I think, on the 1st of next month.
Yeah. And
that requires real estate agents to do, so anyone dealing with property, by the way, including accountants and lawyers and conveyancers and mortgage people and all the rest of it, to do some stuff they've never had to do before. The banks have had to do it, but real estate hasn't, in terms of knowing your customer and so on and so forth. Now, this came in New Zealand back in 2019, yes. And I see Australia going through exactly the same steps, but faster. So what we'll see in the next 6 months, I think, is a lot of real estate agents going, wow, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And wow, the service that I've bought online to do all this with a piece of software still requires a lot of human intervention. And wow, myself or my senior guy who's now the nominated anti-money laundering manager is really busy just doing crappy stuff with filling out bits of paper and pushing this here and pushing that there. We need to put on some more admin staff to support that person. And in the New Zealand experience, a lot of that was done after the first round of auditing. So after 6 months or 8 months, there was a big uptake of outsourcing, much like property management VAs. They were outsourcing anti-money laundering VAs. So we can look forward to that coming, but that's not going to be an AI exercise yet, because no one's got the process down well enough to train an AI. It's going to require some people to train to create the process and document it, and then you can give those documents to an AI. But then you're going to need human supervision, because anyone who tells you that AI doesn't screw up and doesn't hallucinate and doesn't do all the things that junior staff do, misunderstand, they're dreaming. Tell them they're dreaming. I said that to my AI the other day, and it asked me what I meant. What Australian doesn't know what that means? So yeah, I think augmentation is the right word. AI is going to augment human staff. It's not going to replace them in the future that I can foresee. Various people are trying, and this industry is moving very quickly, and the scale of the rollout of AI is frighteningly fast. But I just don't see them being able to do all the things that humans can do, or trusted to do all the things that human can do, just yet.
Yes, and let's just expand on that too, Wayne. There are policies and procedures that follow the bell curve, right? So there might be policies and procedures that do the majority of the activities, but there are exceptions to those activities, and it's knowledge and experience at the front end and the back end that's outside the norm or the standard deviation. Where does that come from? The AI wouldn't have that. I want the surgeon. I had a hip replacement a couple of years ago, and I went to a guy who had done literally hundreds of hip replacements. That's the guy I want, not the person that was trained by an AI who conceptually can do a hip replacement but hasn't done any.
Yeah, it's a complicated area when we get into AI and health.
Yes.
You're talking about doing hip replacements. It's a fairly good bet that your guy, highly skilled and highly qualified, has not reviewed every bad case of hip replacement in the world that happened up until yesterday at noon.
Yeah.
But the AI may well have. So, should you use a model A or a model B? How does this relate to your particular circumstances? There are some things that I see in health that AI is going to do or is doing better than people. But there are some things that it's not.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, it's the deep seek, or not deep. Yeah, I think it was deep seek. Anyway, it was a Google product that identified the ability to read breast cancer images, 10,000 images, and identify the 8 major markers of breast cancer. And it not only could do that at 95% effectiveness and better than human beings, it said, oh, and by the way, humans, you missed one. Here's a 9th one, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But let me give you the outlier story. The outlier story is my business partner, Jeff Ferguson, who you've met.
Yes. Now, don't disclose anything about his health or we'll be taken off the air.
Okay.
You've identified the individual. We can't talk about his health.
Okay. All I was going to say was he went in for a scan, and it turned out the scan that he was going in for identified no issues. But the human who was reviewing the scan identified something else, which wasn't what the scan was being used for, but because of his knowledge and experience, he identified something else that was literally life-threatening. And as a result, that got treated and he got fixed.
Yeah, I can't comment on it. I think, by the way, the breast cancer study with pattern recognition, which is a bit old now, I think that was Australian research, not Chinese. And that ability is now throughout all of the models. And it's a skill set that, because the AI doesn't get tired, because it hasn't looked at 10,000 other images today, well, it might have looked at 10,000, but because it doesn't get tired, because it doesn't need a bit more sugar, because all of those reasons, yes, some of that stuff is superbly done by computer now. But
the classic example is the game of Go, where Go learned how to play the game from humans, and within a matter of a year or two, it beat the best human in the world, and that was it. End of story. And it's something like 15 times more complex than chess, and it came up with moves that nobody had ever even considered or thought of, and it's now the best in the world. So in hard physics or math activities, the AI is clearly going to pass us.
Yeah. On the other hand, when they used AI to war game, as we talked about last time, 90% of them reached the point that they should use the nuclear option.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
96%.
This is a brave new world that we're in, folks. We are not. I don't think anyone, and I say this completely deliberately, I don't think anyone, including the senior scientists at all of these companies, actually know how the hell this stuff works. And I don't think they know where it's going, and I don't think they know what they're going to do.
No.
But that was also the case with every wave of technology we've ever been through. When Gutenberg invented the printing press, no one could foresee what that would mean.
No.
When we had got steam engines and electric engines and electricity and mobile phones and social media and email and the World Wide Web, Monty and I have been through most of those technology waves.
Yep.
here's my challenge to you as listeners. There is an academic model that says, how will society deal with shaping itself? And there are two ends on a spectrum. One is social determinism, that is to say, as a society, we will determine the shape of our society. And the other is technological determinism, which is technology will determine the shape of our society. Now, I can't name, maybe you can, I can't name any technology that's ever invented where the human race has said, that's really bad, let's not do that. Everything from nuclear weapons to biological weapons to you know, the stuff that damages the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not the economy, the environment. Sorry. You know, we have had lots of evidence that doing this is bad for our home, the earth, but we still do it. And so the only little glimmer of hope I can give for social constructivism is that there are some religious orders in the world who deliberately choose not to have refrigerators in their houses, but to have refrigerators in their commercial dairies and some of that sort of stuff. But generally, all the experience I can see since the beginning of time has been, if the human species invents a technology, it uses it. And AI is a technology that's been invented, and I think we're going to use it.
Yep, but even again, if the Anthropic, who's going for $1 trillion valuation in an IPO shortly, even the head of Anthropic the other day said, this is moving at a fast pace. We're going to publicly list so we have the CapEx to be able to buy more equipment, machines and computers and chips and all of that. And he said, but you know, I think maybe it's time we just slow down a little bit. Take some more time.
And again, the theory on technological determinism would say that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Because of a capitalist world and nations, every producer of technology wants to do it first and better and faster to defeat the competition. So we'll just use some military analogies in here. When I say defeat, I'm talking about defeat. This is nation building existential issue.
And it's worth noting, you can tell from my accent, Wayne, that I'm originally an American, and I was living in Ohio, and so I got to go to Pennsylvania and see the Amish communities. Now, the Amish still use horse and buggy for transport. No telephones, no computers. When they need a new barn, the whole community gets together and builds the barn in the same way they always done it. But do we see the Amish as a population expanding across the globe and ending up every place else in the world? I don't think so. It works well for them, and I'm not having a shot at the Amish in any way, but it isn't a, and even they force their children to leave the community for a year or two around the age of 20 to see what this big world of technology, everything is. And some come back, some don't. But the point is they're not restrictive in that. But again, there's nothing that would stop me from starting an Amish community in Brisbane, Australia, but I don't think it would have much traction.
The issue for me about this particular wave of technology is that the distribution is almost instantaneous. And what I mean by that is,
yes,
when Windows first came out with, or Apple first came out with, you know, Microsoft Word, or with an Apple processor, they had to make CDs and make floppy disks and put them in packages and send cartons around the world, and it had to go into a retail store and people had to hand money over the counter. Now, of course, all of that is done electronically at the speed of light, simultaneously and globally. And so this is a whole new world. It's happening very quickly.
Well, and look at our experience right now. You and I are talking, and I happen to know, you know, in the past, we had a tripod with a video camera on it. We had a RODE microphone for the sound and this and that. And now I'm here on a MacBook, and I think I don't know which computer you're using in your office today, but all the cameras and the microphones are built in, and all that extra stuff we don't need. It's just built in.
And not too long ago, for me, I mean, let's say maybe 30 years ago, which is a long time for some people, but not too long when you're our age, Monty. We would dream about having an international video call, but it would have involved bringing a team of people in with, as you say, lights and tripods and cameras, and maybe buying dedicated bandwidth, and it would have cost a lot of money. And now here are we recording this. I'm in the Philippines, you're in Australia. It's just being recorded on a couple of laptops over the internet, and it's a better quality call than I used to get on Telstra.
Yeah. And the ability then to take the outcome of this and slice and dice it and reformat it and repackage it all exists either on your laptop or in the cloud for 1/10 of 1% of what it used to cost.
And for our audience, we are real and we're live to tape, we call it, but the slicing and dicing and all the rest of it is done by the AI. So
I'll add just a brief story to that because we're now sitting here on whatever the day is. It's the 10th of June 2026, and the news is that a helicopter got shot down in the Straits of Hormuz, and the 2 pilots managed to leave the helicopter, but they were recovered and brought back to safety by a drone.
Yep.
So technology is changing. They didn't send a boat out there with some people to jump in the water and pull them out. They just sent a drone out and they brought them back that way.
And it's nice proof of life. We've read the newspapers today, so
yeah. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily newspaper, the news. So another thing that I wanted to touch on, Monty, while we're talking about this augmentation, not all of this is done by, a bunch of complicated AIs. Some of it is just done by using the technology to make things simpler and easier. And your Preserver app just does the simplest step of all. It's not revolutionary technology. It's not. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, the Preserver app that I've been promoting, its most viewed short video that I did on YouTube was called "Quit App Hopping," because there's nothing that Preserver does on your phone that isn't native to the phone. It can record voice notes. It can record text. It can record pictures and video. It can record locations and maps and GPS. All of those things are native to the phone. But what it does is it puts it all on one screen. So as soon as you go to use it and you say, I need to capture some information, you press the very first button, date, time stamp, GPS coordinates, GPS map, and then there's 4 tabs across the top. What do you want? Voice? Do you want text? Do you want video, or do you want photos? And you can add as many of those in whichever format you like and hop all around and never leave that screen. And it's all just there. And that's just putting them all together simply to make your life easier and to save time. I already had a good friend of mine who's in Ireland who came back and said, "Oh, Monty, I can do the mapping of my map coordinates and photos using Google Photos and another program called Swarm." And I said, "Well, you're absolutely right. You can do that. But that's still 2 programs you've got to use." And I said, "And then how do you add an audio with it? How do you add a video with it? How do you record the date and time?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, but. And I said, yeah. I get all your buts. But the point is you're 2-finger typing and I can 6-finger type." So it simplifies that. And then, of course, it allows you then to contain that information on your phone, which is a privacy tool. So it allows you to keep it on your local device which you can then back up to an SD drive or to a laptop or to the cloud. Your choice. Distribution is your choice. So that's how Preservers is being used by people. It also, by the way, is kind of clever in that it will do all of that recording of that information, since it's localized, without the need of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
Yeah. One of the things that often gets forgotten in these conversations about technology and using stuff is that the people who are using this are people. And so a great story in the kind of research world is that they discovered that the spread of disease way back was often because surgeons and particularly childbirth doctors went from one patient to the next and wiped their hands and went on to the next one. And so that was proven very categorically to be a source of infection between patients, and the medical profession came out and said, oh, we should wash our hands. It took 30 years before that got widely adopted, and lots of people in working in the health profession today would still say that it still hasn't got universal 100% acceptance. So my point is that we have the technology doesn't necessarily mean that we become comfortable and willing participants in using it.
Yes.
And one of the things that you talked about recently with Preserver that I thought was a clever approach, Monte, was that implementing changes into an organization that you work for is not easy, because all of the existing management, middle management and senior management, they've invested in the status quo at a personal level. They've made the decisions to buy the existing software, to install the current whatever it is. And yes, it's sunk cost, but people always, it's very hard to throw out your children. So if you've got a pet project that you've spent 20 years implementing and developing and getting it to work and all the rest of it, and then some young whippersnapper who's probably only 55 wants to come along and just get rid of it because of something new, the tendency is to defend what you did. And so it's quite difficult to drive change in an organization from the position of a mid-level employee. I think you have to drive the change at all levels of the organization, and there's lots of people who are experts in this and know much more about it than I do, but from my experience, change is never painless. Yeah. So one of the things that you suggested, and I'll throw back to you to tell the story in detail, was not trying to get rid of all legacy systems, but just using Preserver as an interface. How does that work?
Yep. Thank you for that question, Wayne. Well, I guess I go backwards to go forwards. In the beginning, I was looking at Preserver predominantly as a digital journal device, because it could capture all this information. And then I realized that that's a limited market, and there's a lot of other people that provide those services. Some uniqueness to Preserver with its privacy aspect and local storage. But it was a narrow market, journaling. And then I realized through use that it could become a data capture tool for a front end to multiple things, to a CRM for a salesman, to expense reporting for somebody who's traveling, to timekeeping, which also affects your outsourcing environment. So all of these things can be captured with Preserver, taken by an AI to take that information, sort it, and format it for input into legacy systems. So whatever, I mean, I use Xero. I think you might be a Xero user as well. But I can take a picture of an invoice with Preserver, send it to an AI and say, format this in the proper format to be inputted into my Xero. so that it goes in, and I again, as I said earlier, like the email, there's some of them that I want to improve, but after it's proved to me that it can do it correctly 2 or 3 times, I'll let it go for certain receipts. Other ones that are more complex, I might want to say, put it as a draft entry into my Xero, and then I'll approve it or not.
Yeah, I use Preserver here with my staff for maybe a more cynical reason. I have remote staff in the Philippines who are working from home, and by getting them to use Preserver to tell me when they start work and tell me when they stop work, it's not impossible to cheat with that, but it's less likely because that information comes to me, actually comes to my AI via their phone to their SkyDrive, whatever it is, to my SkyDrive, to my AI, and it comes place stamped and time and date stamped. So yes, if you're serious, you could probably edit some of that and change it, but it's a complicated process.
Yeah.
And so it just very simple exercise. It's a free app. They just take the photo. It proves where they were when they took it. It proves the time and date where they were. And that just, I don't think it actually is something you ever want to worry about. You're going to use it as evidence in a dismissal or something. But I've always found when you're supervising staff that the supervision should be visible so that people know they're being supervised.
Yes.
And people don't want that to be intrusive. They don't want that to feel like, it's a big brother counting keystrokes or anything. But it's a simple app. It's easy to do, and it gives me some comfort, and it gives them a sense that they're being supervised.
Yep. And I just wanted to add an aside story, a twofold aside story. When I first graduated from university, and I had money, the first thing I did was buy a stereo system. And back then you had an amplifier, you had your radio, you had your turntable, you had your speakers, and it had this equalizer where I could adjust the treble and the bass across 5 or 7 different channels. I have all these things. And in my, what I affectionately call my wanker-mobile, which is an Audi TT that I drive, I cannot, with the radio, I can adjust the bass, I can adjust the treble, I can adjust the fader from front to back and everything else. And I did that once after I bought it, and I've never touched those features again. It's features creep. And when I bought that stereo system with the equalizer and the balance and the treble and all that sort of stuff, I did it once because that's why I bought that, because I thought I needed that. And once I set it and it was right, I never touched it again.
And they were the days when that's what young men did. Now, of course, you have all of that and better quality sound on your mobile phone and in your earbuds. And where's the joy and wonder of the world gone, Monty? Who can ever scream at someone for scratching one of their records now? I mean, what's the world come to? Having said that, we've come to the end of our time. So a few things for our exit notices. Firstly, this show is done for entertainment, and we're not giving advice in anything professional, including financial or legal or anything else. The opinions being expressed are just ours. Secondly, we're sitting here talking to our computers, which might make us very sad old men, but it'd be nice if we had some indicator that someone is listening. So if you are listening and if you enjoy the show, or even if you don't enjoy the show, click on whatever buttons are on the media you're watching us on, whether they be hearts or follows or subscribes or whatever, and let us know you're there. And love us or hate us, make a comment. And we do read all the comments, and we're happy to be steered by you about what we do. If you think we're too technical for you, let us know, and we'll put out some content that starts back at the beginning which, by the way, for almost everyone is less than a year ago. There's not many people in the world who were doing anything with AI 12 months ago. So don't feel that you're 10 years behind, because no one was doing this 10 years ago. At the very most, you may be 6 to 12 months behind if you've never heard the words before. And so if you'd like us to go back to the beginning and explain some more about how it fits together, because I'm a great believer that we can't understand things unless we have the basics down first, we're happy to do that. And I think I've kind of got it all. Talk to us, tell us stuff, the legal notice, and that's it. Monty, you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one comment to that, Wayne, and that is I was doing, again, using AI for research, and I watch videos as you do, long form, shorts, everything else. But I noticed a lot of people were saying, unlike what you just did, yes, we do read all your comments. So if you have comments and feedback, we'd love to get it. But I heard people that were saying, hey, just tell us where it is that you're watching this from. We'd like to know what country you're from. So as you said, I'm in Australia, you're in the Philippines. And I thought, geez, I'm seeing a lot of people asking, not for comments, plus or minus, not for thumbs up or down, just saying, tell us where you're from.
Man, what a great thing to ask our audience to do, Monty, because I have no idea. I see the numbers. I can tell how many people have looked at the video, but I have no idea where they are. So wherever you are in the world, drop a note to just let us know, and I'll give all those locations to AI, and it can draw me a map so that I can feel globally significant. That'll be good for my ego.
But I asked AI, why are these people asking for where it was being recorded? I watch a lot of cooking shows where people tell me how to make food because I enjoy cooking. And it was it was a throwaway line at the end, please tell us where you're from. So I put that into AI. I said, why is this going on? Why does everybody want to know where the viewers are from? And it turns out that in the case of Google, for YouTube videos, engagement with the videos, as simple as just saying, I'm from Brisbane, Australia, is an engagement with that video, and it helps that video rank higher. So the reason why, so you might be thinking, the reason why we ask where you're from is because we want that engagement number because it'll boost our videos. You'd be true.
Well, one of the things that Monty says quite often, if the service is free, then you're the product. So yes, this is a free broadcast, and now we're asking you to do something because you're the product. So having said all that, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye, folks.